If you're thinking about teaching ESL independently, you might have reached that slightly terrifying moment where you realize you don't just need students. You need somewhere to teach them, you need curriculum, you need scheduling, you need a way to get paid, you need policies, you need to figure out what you're going to charge. And then there's that small problem of actually finding the students. It can very quickly feel like you need to build an entire business before you're allowed to teach your first class. You don't. If I were starting an independent online ESL teaching business today, there are 7 things I would focus on first, and there's an order I would do them in. That's what I'm going to walk you through today. And if you're actually in the process of making this transition, I've also created a completely free course for new independent teachers that takes you through all of this in much more detail with templates and worksheets and calculators and tools. And I'm going to put that below because we're going to cover a lot today, but you definitely don't have to figure it all out from one YouTube video. So let's start with the piece I think most teachers are tempted to skip. I'm Megan. I'm a certified teacher and a curriculum developer, and I've been teaching online since 2017. I run both my own independent teaching business and Florentis Learning, where I create curriculum and tools for independent teachers. So I've had to figure out a lot of these systems myself, and I've also spent a lot of time working with teachers who are trying to make this transition from a company to an independent business, or maybe they haven't taught at a company and they're just looking to get started. And one of the biggest mistakes I see is starting with the tools. Don't. Start here with step 1. Decide who you actually want to teach. So, one of the first questions I ask teachers who say, like, what should I do? I'm like, who do you teach? And the common answer is, I teach English. Okay, but to whom? Who are these people? And a 4-year-old beginner learning their very first English words has a completely different set of needs than a 12-year-old preparing for a Cambridge English exam, such as the preliminary PET exam. Or an adult who wants conversational English for work is another completely different student. And you don't necessarily need a tiny niche, but you need to be able to explain what you do in a way that a parent or a student immediately understands what it is that you do and who you are. So instead of I teach English online, maybe it's I help children ages 6 to 10 build confident conversational English. Or I work with older children who are preparing for Cambridge English exams. Or I teach beginner English to young learners through interactive online lessons. And here's something that's important. You're not choosing this for the rest of your life. You're choosing somewhere to start. It means that everything you say and you do is going to help you attract these types of students. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be turning down other students, because in the beginning, you might be tempted to sort of take everyone and sort of try it out. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's harder, but there's still nothing wrong with that. What you're doing is you're choosing a starting point. You can change your niche, you can add another age group, you can discover the students that you thought you wanted to teach aren't actually your favorite students to teach at all. And that's okay. But it's much easier to build the rest of your business when you know who you're building it for. And so there's an exercise in my free independent teacher course that helps you work through this more carefully. Particularly if you're coming from a teaching platform where maybe you have had hundreds or thousands of different students. You have some students maybe you love to teach and some that you don't like to teach. And all of that is some good information that you can use. So if you've never really thought about which students are the best fit for you, check out the information in the course because it is a great place to start. I'll leave the course below. It's completely free, so you can work through it alongside these steps. And I'll also pin it in the comments. That's step 1. So what's step 2? Step 2 is to take who you're going to teach and turn it into an offer. And so once you know who you want to teach, the next question is, what can someone actually buy from you? Because I teach English It's $25 an hour, isn't really an offer. Think about what you're providing. Maybe your student receives two 30-minute lessons each week, a structured curriculum, practice activities, lesson previews, regular feedback, homework activities, progress update for parents. Now the parent isn't buying 60 minutes of your time, and that takes more than 60 minutes. They're buying a learning experience. And this becomes particularly important when you're moving away from a large teaching platform because the platform used to define the product. It decided how long the class was, it often provided the curriculum, it handled the booking, it may have even told parents what they were buying. When you're independent, you need to make those decisions. And that's exciting, but it also can be a little bit scary because it means you have to make them, right? So before worrying about your logo, your website, think about who do you help? What are you helping them accomplish? And what exactly does a family receive when they work with you? That's your starting offer. So let's look at step three. And step three is probably the one closest to my heart because I am a curriculum developer. So step three is to choose a curriculum. And I'm not going to tell you every independent teacher needs to use the same curriculum. You don't. What I am going to tell you is that you need some kind of system because there's a huge difference between having lots of teaching materials and having a curriculum. You can have 700 PDFs in a Google Drive. You can have teacher pay teacher resources. You can have Canva presentations. You can have old platform lessons. You can have games bookmarked in 15 different places. And then you still sit down on Sunday night thinking, what on earth am I teaching Joe tomorrow, right? After you finish today's lesson, do I know what the student should learn next? And if the answer is consistently no, you don't have a resource problem. You probably have an organization or a curriculum problem. This is one of the reasons I built the Florentis Learning the way I did. I wanted to be able to look at a student, understand approximately where they were, choose an appropriate learning path, and have a logical next lesson, instead of searching for something new every single week. So whether you use Florentis or another published curriculum, or something you've built yourself, look for progression. Where does the student start? Where are they going? How do the lessons build on one another? And how will you know they're progressing? If this is the part of the independent teaching that you're really struggling with, subscribe to my channel because I'm going to be sharing a lot more about how I plan lessons, choose what to teach next, and track student progress without spending hours doing it. Those systems are a huge part of how I actually run my own teaching business, and they're a huge part of the tools that Florentis Learning can offer you. So let's talk about step four. So step four is your minimum tech stack. Think about technology and don't please interpret this as I'm going to start an online teaching business, so I need to immediately subscribe to 17 different pieces of software. You really don't need that, right? At the beginning, think about the jobs that you need your technology to perform. You need somewhere to teach. So it could be Zoom, Voov, Qualago, ClassIn, or another virtual classroom. And you need a way for students to schedule lessons. And that can be as simple as setting up a consistent weekly time or weekly schedule and putting it into your Google Calendar, right? You need a way to accept payment. This could be Stripe, it could be PayPal, it could be a service that offers payment plan payments. And then you need a way to communicate with your students or their parents. And then we need somewhere to keep some basic student records, right? You need to be able to see the information about your students, to be able to easily find it. And that also is helpful for figuring out what's next and keeping track of what's next because you can't rely on your head to remember absolutely everything, especially as your student base grows. So that's enough to start. Florentis Learning does offer the Teacher Hub, which is a tool to help you do a lot of these things. You can schedule, you can communicate, you can keep all of your records there, and of course, it helps you with what curriculum to use. But it can be used with or without the Florentis Learning lessons. So even if you are an independent teacher who is using all of your own created material, that's okay. You can still use the Teacher Hub with Florentis Learning to help you with all of that business organization side. So you can automate things later. You can build a fancy website later. You can have a client relationship management system later. You can spend an embarrassing amount of time building your own teacher hub, which may or may not be something I've done. But you do need all of that to get student number one. But you do not need all of that to get student number one. Build the system your current business needs, not the system you imagine you'll need when you've got 100 students and you've got other teachers working for you. So actually tell me in the comments right now, which part of the tech stack is giving you the biggest headache? Is it the classroom? Is it scheduling? Is it payments? Is it keeping track of students? That'll help me also decide which tutorials to make for you next. So we're on to step five. Step five is to decide your prices and your policies. And this is the question that everybody wants answered. How much should I charge? And I'm going to disappoint you slightly because there isn't a magic number, but the free online course does have a calculator that can help you find your magic number. So your price does depend on your experience, the market that you're teaching in, the lesson length, your specializations or background, what you include with that. Does it include lesson previews, homework, feedback, all of those things, or is it just open, teach, leave? Um, and then who you're serving, right? So you need to understand the students as well and what is affordable in that region. But there are some decisions you should make before you start accepting students related to this. So are the families paying you per class in packages of 10, 30, 50, monthly subscriptions? So decide on the frequency. Decide when the payment is due. And I'm going to tell you the answer to this should be before class. You're going to think about what happens when someone cancels and what happens if someone doesn't show up. Are these lessons that they pay for? Are these lessons that they can have rescheduled? And so then there's that next question. Can the lessons be rescheduled? How much notice do you require? So is it, 3 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours? Keeping in mind, the more notice that you require, the more notice you should provide to your students when you need to cancel. So it does go both ways if you've got a little bit more flexibility. So these questions seem like they're unnecessarily formal, and having like a policy seems unnecessarily formal when you have two students, but it stops feeling unnecessary the very first time somebody cancels 6 minutes before class and asks you to move their credit to next month. Or even better, doesn't show up and says, "Oh, I'm sorry, teacher. I forgot to let you know. But can we have the lesson tomorrow instead?" And again, they want to use that credit, but maybe you sat in front of your computer for 30 minutes and waiting for them just in case they were late and they weren't there. So decide your policies before you need to enforce them and put them in writing. And I go into much more detail about setting up the business side in the free course because this is just one of those areas where a 10-minute section in a YouTube video just isn't enough. So if you're sitting here thinking, okay, but what should my actual policy say? What should I set up first? Then use the link in the comments or in the description and work through the course rather than trying to remember everything I'm throwing at you. So step six is the fun one, and it's the one people usually want to start with. But I do encourage you to go through steps 1 to 5 first. Step six is, where do my students come from? Find your first students. So imagine you haven't done steps 1 to 5 yet, and someone messages you tonight and says, "I'd love English lessons for my 7-year-old. How does your program work?" And you're like, "Yay, I've got my first student." And then you're like, "Uh-oh, how do I answer this message?" Right? Um, can you actually answer it? Who do you teach? What are you offering? What curriculum will you use? Where will you teach? Like, what link do you send them so that they can join the classroom? How much does it cost? How do they book? How do they pay? And if you've worked through the first 5 steps, you're ready to have that conversation. And you just need to create more of those conversations. If you're coming from a teaching platform, you can start by thinking about the experience and the reputation you already have. What kinds of students have you successfully taught? What problems have parents repeatedly asked you to solve? What results have you seen your students achieve? Especially if you've got students who are the same students that take classes over and over again, you're able to see those results. If you are teaching on a platform where every day you've got different students and you never see the same student twice, then the results part is a little bit more challenging. But the results could be things like pronunciation improvement, reading, conversation. So think about what it is that you're good at. And then think about what testimonials or reviews maybe you have from your platform that you might legitimately be able to use. Obviously, you don't want to use things about their lessons, about their platform, and things that aren't going to necessarily apply to your business, but things about your teaching style and the feedback you give and those types of things are all things that you probably can use. Now, we're going to look at the places where the families you want to work with actually spend time. So if you're looking maybe to the Chinese market, then Xiaohongshu or Little Red Book is a great place to look. But you also could be looking at referrals from existing parents. You could be looking at parent communities, social media, maybe local community networks, like, the local Facebook group for your area. You could be looking at teacher directories or tutor marketplaces. You could be looking at content marketing or your existing professional network. If you have a newcomers association in your area, then that's often a good source of local students as well. Um, but you don't need to be everywhere. You want to pick one or two methods and learn to do them consistently. I'd rather see a teacher become really good at one way of finding students than create seven social media accounts you hate updating. If you aren't going to make short videos, don't use TikTok. I don't use TikTok. I'll get on YouTube and make stuff, but I have like nothing. I don't even have an account on TikTok, let alone know how to use it. And finding students is a big enough subject that I'll do some other videos on it, but there are three videos already on the channel. There's an interview with Teacher Jay and an interview with Teacher Kathy, and there's an interview with Jillian as well. So there's some lots of ideas on the channel, and I'll link those in the description if you're looking for information on finding students. Step 7. So this is our last step. You want to think about this, and it seems like a funny thing to think about first. And people often don't get this advice when they are looking at, getting started in other videos and things you might see. But I think it's really important. You want to build a business students want to stay with. So we talk about how do I get students? But really, we should be asking, why would they stay? Because you don't want to rebuild your student roster every 3 months. Finding students is hard. And every 3 months to find new students, figure out what level they're at, build those relationships with parents. Like you're on that constant treadmill, and there's going to be enough of that. So you want to figure out how to keep the students you've got. Students need lessons that are appropriate for their level. Parents need to understand what their child's doing. And families need evidence that it's going somewhere. There's a path. We can see progression. It doesn't necessarily mean formal testing every month. It might mean lesson feedback, progress reports, learning goals, structured curriculum, occasional assessments, and conversations with the parents about what you're working toward. So, this is another reason that I'm such a strong believer in having a curriculum rather than teaching an endless collection of disconnected lessons. The parent should be able to ask, how is my child doing? And you should have a better answer than, great, she did really well today. You should be able to show them something. And there's a business reason for that. And that really is that one of the easiest students to find is the student you don't have to replace. Retention matters. So let's recap. If I were starting again today, this would be my order. 1, decide who to teach. 2, create a clear teaching offer. 3, choose a curriculum system. 4, build only the technology that I actually need. 5, decide my prices and policies. 6, start consistently finding students. And then 7, create systems that give those students a reason to stay with you. And you don't need to finish all 7 this week. You don't need a perfect website. You don't need a giant social media following. And you definitely don't need 12 software subscriptions. You need a clear offer and enough infrastructure to serve your first few students really well. And then you build from there. So, if that's what you're trying to do right now, don't stop with this video. I've created a free course specifically to help teachers work through the process of becoming independent. There's no purchase required. It's there because there is simply too much involved in this transition for me to meaningfully cover it all in one YouTube video. I put the link in the description and I'll pin it in the comments too. Go through it at your own pace and actually do the exercises as you go. There's worksheets, there's calculators, there's all sorts of things in there. The goal isn't to have a perfect teaching business at the end. The goal is to have one that's ready for real students. And once you have those students, there's another problem. What are you going to teach them every week without spending your entire weekend planning? And that's what I'm tackling next. I'm going to show you exactly how I plan a full week of online ESL lessons in about 15 minutes. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you can grab that video next.